Hello, everyone. I'm Mayor MacArthur, Art and Cultural Director of Japan House Los Angeles. We're very excited to announce the opening of our new exhibition, The Art of the Ramen Bowl, at Japan House Los Angeles. Today, we'll be joined virtually by the two curators of the exhibition, Taku Satoh and Mari Hashimoto. But before we meet them, I'd like to introduce President of Japan House Los Angeles, Yuko Kaifu, for a few words of welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first program related to our new exhibition, The Art of the Ramen Bowl, which we opened to the public just a few days ago, as Mayor was talking about. The exhibition introduces one of the most popular Japanese food, ramen, in various aspects. Its history, its culture, its regionality, its main ingredient in the first section of the gallery exhibition. In the second section, we present 30 porcelain ramen bowls featuring designs by some of Japan's top artists and designers. The bowls were made in the Mino region of Gifu prefecture, which is known to be a major center of Japanese ceramics production for over 500 years. The final section of the exhibition introduces the ceramic valley of Mino and the rich variety of ceramics produced in the region. In today's webinar, Mayor is going to introduce some of the delicious designs on the ramen bowls presented in this exhibition and discuss these designs with the exhibition curators, Taku Satoh and Mari Hashimoto. We are deeply grateful to Satoh-san and Hashimoto-san and the entire Mino Ceramic Valley team who helped us immensely in putting together this wonderful and unique exhibition. So I hope that you'll be able to come and visit us. We're going to present quite a few exciting related programs as well, including the ramen pop-ups starting in May. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it back to Mayor, who is going to introduce the exhibition and the two special guests of the day. Back to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Yuko. Now, before we meet our guests, as Yuko said, I'm going to be giving you a taste of some of the ramen bowls in the exhibition, and I'll be highlighting some of the aspects of Japanese design we can enjoy in these ramen bowls. So I'm going to share my screen. So the Art of the Ramen Bowl is the first exhibition to focus on not just the culture of ramen in Japan, but also on the ramen bowls themselves, the donburi. And these bowls are made in the region of Mino, as Yuko just pointed out. The exhibition contains a lot of wonderful information about the history and culture of ramen in Japan, and also about the anatomy of a bowl of ramen. But the heart of the exhibition, what the exhibition really focuses on, are the 30 porcelain ramen bowls that have been designed with wonderful designs by some of Japan's leading artists and designers. And you can see a view of the main section of the exhibition here on your screen. And a total of 30 porcelain ramen bowls. Now, as many of you know, the design of eating and drinking vessels has been a very important part of the enjoyment of eating and drinking in Japan. And in particular, this is the case in the world of the tea ceremony, and also in kaiseki meals, the very formal type of meal where you have many different dishes for different types of food that you eat. And it's very important when designing various vessels out of ceramic or lacquer or other materials that the design goes with the food and enhances the food and the drink. So for example, on the left here, you see a very austere looking matcha chawan, a tea bowl for matcha tea in the tea ceremony. And even though it's very dark and very rugged looking and austere, it's a beautiful counterpart to the very rich green of the tea. So tea masters of the wabi-cha tradition would enjoy serving tea in very dark looking bowls like this. So they were designed specially to have this effect. And in the kaiseki meal and other kinds of elegant meals, a rice bowl like the one you see on the right here, which is oribeware, it might have the design of a flower of a particular season to help enhance the experience of enjoying your rice, for example, in the early summertime. I think these are wisteria flowers that you see here on this bowl. Now, not just in the very high class eating and drinking traditions, but also in all aspects of daily life, the design of the eating and drinking vessel has been really important. So the shape, the color, the texture, and the motifs, often seasonal, being a very important part of the vessels and how they are created. Now, the exhibition, The Art of the Ramen Bowl, asks the question, can the design of a ramen bowl also enhance your experience of eating ramen? And I can say, just by looking at this particular bowl that we'll be seeing again shortly, that I would love to eat a bowl of ramen from a bowl that's designed like this. It looks very elegant and extra delicious. Now, I'm going to be sharing some examples of bowls in the exhibition that I think express or possess some of the qualities that make Japanese design particularly unique and notable. And I've chosen 5 qualities to focus on: elegance, simplicity, imperfection, the interplay of word and image, and playfulness. So I'm going to share a few examples that I think express these different qualities. And these are all on view in the exhibition, and do come and see it as soon as you can. This is a beautiful ramen donburi by the artist Yuki Senda, who works in a shop in Kyoto that prints decorative papers, very elegant, very high-class decorative papers that are used on screen doors, lanterns, and papers. And they've been making these papers for hundreds of years, and the decorations are impressed onto the paper using wood blocks. And they are very elegant, very high-class designs that reflect the elegance and the refinement of the Heian imperial court. So what I love about this bowl is that you see the elegance of Heian court culture on the ordinary bowl that would be used to eat ramen. So there's a lovely elevation of the ramen bowl with this design by Yuki Senda. And these are 2 more bowls that I believe are real expressions of elegance. This one on the left here is by Hisashiten Myoya, and he's an artist who's known for painting somewhat contemporary motifs, but using very elegant traditional Japanese techniques, lots of gold and lots of rich colors. So for example, he's known for painting robot-like figures on folding screens that are coated in gold leaf. So there's a slight sort of incongruity in the content and the technique he uses, but they are very, very rich and luscious and very elegant. In the bowl on the right by Taku Satoh, one of our guests today, you'll see a rather Chinese looking design, and this is deliberately so. Satoh-san has chosen to pay tribute to the origins of ramen as a Chinese noodle dish by creating a bowl that looks very Chinese and somewhat like the type of ramen bowls that ramen has been served in over the decades, but it's much more refined. There's gold in the design. You can see around the board, there are details of gold. The portrayal of the dragon and the phoenix around the outside is very, very elegantly rendered. So again, elevating this dish to something very high class. Now, the second quality that I mentioned is simplicity. And here you see the most simplistic looking bowl in the exhibition. This is by Issay Kitagawa. And he is he's expressing the idea, the concept of gratitude to the gods, kami-sama, in this bowl. Kami-sama are invisible, kami are invisible, but he's created a comma-shaped form inside the bowl in white, on white, to represent the kami. And the idea is that you'll say itadakimasu, showing your gratitude to the kami, and you'll eat your ramen, and only when you finished eating your ramen will the kami appear. So rather ironically, the simplest looking bowl in the exhibition is also the most spiritually profound. Now, another bowl in the exhibition that I think really espouses the idea of simplicity and the beauty of open space is a bowl that's not in the main section of the exhibition. It's actually made by one of the Mino artists, Hitoka Kato, to illustrate the blue and white porcelain technique that has been used in the Mino kilns since the late 19th century. And here you see a beautifully sparsely designed bowl with a butterfly rendered in blue against a pure white background, as if the butterfly is floating among the clouds. And this is a wonderful, elegant representation of the idea of the beauty of simplicity. Now, here is an example of the third quality that I mentioned, one of imperfection. Japanese artists and designers have for many centuries celebrated imperfection and irregularity. And here you see a bowl by Kenjiro Sano. It represents the concept of kintsugi, which is a Japanese technique of mending a broken ceramic using gold lacquer, so that the repair in gold lacquer makes the bowl even more beautiful than when it wasn't broken. So the imperfection actually becomes it's one of the most beautiful aspects of the bowl. The bowl itself isn't actually broken, but it looks like it's been patched together out of broken pieces of porcelain. It's a wonderfully clever design. And here we have the artist, the contemporary artist Tabaimo, who has designed a ramen bowl that has a design of lovers entwined inside the ramen noodles here on the right. And her design, I'm not saying her design is imperfect, but she breaks the rule of the frame or the outline by continuing her design. She bursts her design out over the lip of the bowl and onto the outside. This is a view of the outside here. So the noodles, they wrap around the lip of the bowl and they continue the design on the outside. So this is a way of kind of, again, celebrating the imperfect, the drawing outside the line, by making it into a really beautiful artistic expression. Now, another quality you see a lot in Japanese design is the brilliant combination of words and images. And the words are usually Japanese words in Chinese characters or kanji. And in this bowl, Misa Awatsuji, a designer, has recreated the type of porcelain that she saw and enjoyed as a child when she would visit sushi shops, and she would look at the teacups, the porcelain teacups that had characters that represented the names of the different fish in the sushi shop. And so when she was asked to create a ramen bowl, she created a ramen bowl that is decorated with characters relating to Tokyo style ramen. So here you see yakibuta, grilled pork, and then here's Tokyo, and so many other words relating to Tokyo style ramen. So really a lovely expression of her love of Tokyo style ramen. And this is a very ingenious expression of ramen art by Gugi Akiyama, who has taken one of the ingredients of ramen, the naruto, the fish cake that has a pink spiral design on it, and he has created what he calls the narufabet. And it's basically an alphabet made of little spirals, the pink spirals that you see on the Naruto. You can see here it goes A, B, C, D. And he's created a complete alphabet of Naruto that spirals itself over the well of the bowl. This is one of the most ingenious designs in the exhibition. Very clever. And then we have the final category, playfulness, that we see expressed to the full here in this ramen bowl by Jin Katagiri, who's actually an actor and comedian. And he designed probably the most playful of all the bowls in the exhibition. His goal was to create a bowl that makes us uncomfortable. So if you can imagine this bowl filled with ramen and handed to you, you'll see a thumb sticking over the edge into the soup. And then when you go to scoop the soup up with the renge spoon, you'll see a mouth coming towards you from underneath the soup. And then when you finally finish eating all your noodles, you see this black curly hair at the bottom of the bowl. And this is a self-portrait of the artist here. Very playful design indeed. And then the final two images here, this one is sort of the poster image of this exhibition, a design by one of Japan's most renowned pop artists, Keiichi Tanaami. He's known for his very bold, very psychedelic designs. And this particular design he created from a memory in college when he used to eat a lot of ramen. But one day while he was eating his ramen, a spider fell from the ceiling into his soup and drowned in front of him. And he was so traumatized by this experience, he stopped eating ramen. We don't know if he has eaten ramen since, but when he was asked to decorate a ramen bowl, he conjured up the image of that terrifying spider from his youth and created the most horrific looking spider on the inside of his ramen bowl. And I'm going to end this presentation with an image by Ayame Suzuki, who works with Taku Satoh. She's a designer who, when she was younger, she lived for a while in Florence in Italy. And when she was there, she was very nostalgic for Japan and for Japanese food. So her family sent her instant ramen, and she would eat instant ramen in Florence thinking of Japan. And then when she was asked to design a bowl in Japan recently, she decided to remember Florence in her bowl. So here you have some lettering, buon appetito in Italian, And you can see this golden hair and the shell, which is a reference to Botticelli's Birth of Venus, a painting that she saw when she was in Florence. So a lot of playfulness in this bowl. And I think for those of you who come and see the exhibition or watch it on our virtual tour, which will launch soon, you will enjoy all of these designs tremendously. That's the end of my part of the presentation. It's now my pleasure to welcome our guests to join me back on the screen. Taku Satoh and Mari Hashimoto are joining us remotely from Japan today, and we will have David Neptune join us as well. He'll be translating for us. So welcome, Satoh-san, Hashimoto-san, and David. Thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you so much for this wonderful exhibition. We are all enjoying it so much. Now, I'm going to give you a brief introduction of them both, and then we will start our conversation. Taku Satoh is one of Japan's leading designers. He's president of Taku Satoh Design Office, TSDO, in Tokyo, and president of Japan Graphic Design Association. His work includes product development for such companies as Nikka Whiskey, packaging design for Lotte and Meiji, and graphic design for Issey Miyake's Pleats Please. He has created corporate brands, provided art direction for NHK TV programs, and has produced several exhibitions focusing on the anatomy of design. He and his team designed this exhibition specially for JHLA. And Mari Hashimoto is an art writer, editor, and curator, and is also deputy director of Eisei Bunko, a private museum of the Hosokawa family art collection. She has authored many books, magazine and newspaper articles on Japanese art and design, and appears regularly on art programs for NHK. She has curated many exhibitions, including, as you'll probably remember, a recent exhibition, Kumihimo, and this Ramen Bowl exhibition with Taku Satoh. Also with us today is David Neptune, who will be translating for the artists. So welcome to you all. So I'm going to start with a question for Satoh-san. My first question is, the original designer Ramen Bowl with 25 of the porcelain bowls was held in Tokyo in 2014. How did the idea for an exhibition of designer ramen bowls arise?
1本目の質問ですが、佐藤さんにお聞きしたいと思います。日本で、東京で2014年に初めて開催された展覧会では、25個のラーメンの丼が展示されたと思うんですけれども、その展覧会のアイデアはどこから来たのでしょうか。
はい、どうもこんにちは。佐藤拓です。まずですね、美濃焼の産地がですね、日本で一番大きな陶磁器の産地なんですけれども、非常に多様に発展してきた産地で、個性がないのではないかっていうふうに言われてたんですね。で、その産地を世界に向けてどういうふうに発信をするべきかっていう相談をまず最初に受けました。
Hello, my name is Taku Satoh, and originally the idea for this exhibition came because in the Mino region of Japan, they were specializing in this type of ceramic, and they approached me because they wanted to basically share this style with the rest of the world, because there was this critique that there wasn't very much diversity in that style of ceramic in the area.
です。とても長い歴史のある産地で、世界に向けてこの産地をどういうふうに伝えるかという課題に対してですね、あまり深い文化のところからお伝えしてもですね、なかなかの一般の人に理解してもらえないのではないか、と思って悩んでいました。で、そうしましたら、ここの産地でラーメン丼の約9割をですね、作ってるっていうことを耳にしたんですね。で、そのラーメンっていうのは世界中に広まっている一つの日本食なわけで、とても人気があるラーメン文化なわけですね。で、ラーメン丼っていうものを入り口にすると、多くの人がまず興味を持ってもらえるんじゃないだろうか。で、そこから美濃焼の文化へお連れするっていう、そういうストーリーって言いますか、流れをですね、思いついたわけです。
The first thought was that to sort of tell this long history of the Mino region ceramics, I pondered how to tell that story, and I didn't want to tell the deep history and the deep tradition because I thought that would be kind of a difficult entry point for international sort of, for lack of a better word, audience members who are hearing about this for the first time. And so once I heard that 90% of Japan's ramen bowls were produced in the Mino region, I decided that, ramen as a food, as a Japanese food, is so well known internationally, and it's very popular that that could be a really good entry point for people to sort of spark their interest about the Mino region and the China that is produced in that area. So I decided to tell the story that way.
それでこのプロジェクトが始まって、間もなくですね、私は橋本まりさんの力がこれは必要だと、どうしても橋本まりさんと一緒にお仕事が進められたらと思って、早い段階でもうすでに橋本まりさんにお声掛けをさせていただいたということですね。はい。
So then, as I started the project, I knew that Mari Hashimoto here would be crucial for this endeavor. So very early on, I reached out to her as a very important member of this endeavor.
Thank you. It's a great story. So the exhibition in 2014 was a department store in the Ginza district. So I'm sure many people visited it. Hashimoto-san, what were the Japanese audience's reaction to these designer ramen bowls? Were people surprised?
橋本さんへの質問ですけれども、2014年の展覧会は銀座のデパートで行われたとお聞きしました。そこでの日本人の方の反応はいかがでしたか？
はい、橋本まりです。今日はよろしくお願いします。今のご質問に対してお答えしますと、おそらく今アメリカで開催されている展覧会に対するアメリカのお客様の反応とあまり変わらないと思います。というのは、ラーメンボール、ラーメン丼はこういうものだ、こういう形でこういうデザインだという、固定観念が皆さん持ってらっしゃるのに対して、そのギャップに驚いて次に喜んだり楽しんだりしてくださる、そういう反応が非常に多かったように思います。
So, my name is Mari Hashimoto. Thank you for having me. The reactions in Japan were not very different as I think they've been here in the US, rather. There is sort of a set expectation of what ramen bowls should look like, and this exhibit sort of turns that on its head. And so, enjoying that gap and the sense of humor, I think, was something that the audience really enjoyed.
付け加えますと、先ほどメイヤーさんからもご紹介がありましたが、本来ラーメンボール、あるいは、料理の中に入っていると嬉しくないもの、髪の毛であるとか、虫であるとか、指であるとか、そういうものがデザインの中に取り込まれていることで、そのユーモア、どちらかというとシニカルなユーモアのようなものにクスッと笑ったり、あるいは先ほどのプレゼンテーションの中に画像は出てきませんでしたが、本来日本料理の食器としてかなり高級なものとしてデザインされた食器をパロディ化してしまうようなデザインであったり、そういった本来こうあるべきというところから外れたところにどんな面白いアイデアのソースがあるのかということをデザイナーの皆さんが生かしてくださった、そこに生まれるギャップにやはり皆さん笑ったり面食らったりで、またそれを楽しんだり、そういう反応だったと思います。
So, as Mayor's presentation showed, there are these ramen bowls with things that you normally wouldn't want in ramen, like hair or bugs or fingers. And this type of humor, this cynical humor, I think made people really laugh. And there was one bowl, or there were the sort of higher quality ceramics that you might normally see, which weren't pictured in the presentation today, are sort of a source of creating a more humorous version of that and creating like a parody of that. I think was very interesting that a lot of designers took that approach, and that really a lot of the audiences enjoyed that.
And Hashimoto-san, were people surprised at the very elegant ramen bowls in Japan? That the designs like Hisashi Temyoya or Yuki Sanda's bowls that look like they're designed for the emperor. Were people in Japan surprised to see designs like that on a humble ramen bowl?
ちょっと橋本さんにお聞きしますけれども、とてもエレガントな例として、その天明屋さんや千田さんの丼があったと思うんですけど、もうまるでお殿様に出すかのような、そのような丼があったと思うんですけれど、そのような丼への反応はどうでしたか？
そうですね。 千田さんはプレゼンテーションにもあったように、唐紙という日本の伝統がある、そしてそれこそ高級なインテリアに用いられる文様を、手掛けるお店の職人、アーティストなんですけれども、そういった本来、今我々が使っているラーメン丼にはとても見られないような、これは良い方のギャップというかね、をデザイン化してくださった。そのことでもラーメンというものがもともと持っているイメージ、値段が安くて、すぐ食べられて、非常にポピュラーなファーストフードであるというイメージを、これは良い方に、高級な方に裏切る、デザインだったと思います。そのギャップもやはり皆さん楽しんでいらっしゃいました。はい。
So I think it was Miss Senda that you mentioned with her karakami piece. She really works with a lot of traditional Japanese emblems at her store, and so that sort of imagery is not very common in the ramen donburi in Japan. Ramen is thought of as a cheap, easy, sort of fast food item. And so to take that and turn it on its head in the other direction, make it really high class and something that's very classy was also something that audiences really enjoyed seeing.
And I have another question related to that for Satoh-san. After the exhibition in Tokyo, do you think Japanese people changed the type of ramen balls that they eat from? Do you think they want to eat from fancier ramen balls now?
佐藤さんに質問です。日本での展覧会の後、東京や、日本ではどのようなラーメンの丼でラーメンを食べるかというのが日本人の方は変わったと思いますか？よりいい丼を手に入れて食べることが多くなったと思いますか？
はい、そうですね、これだけ多彩なラーメン丼が、一様になんて言いますか、展示されるっていうことは多分今までなかったことだと思うんですね。ですからまず展覧会を見た人はラーメン丼のグラフィックっていうのはこんなに自由でいいんだっていう今までの固定概念がさっき橋本さんがおっしゃったみたいに壊れたと思うんですね。ですから展覧会を見た人は多分ラーメンを食べに行くと丼結構見ると思いますね。ですごく保守的な丼なのか、もしくは結構ラディカルな丼なのかっていうふうに丼を楽しむ目っていうものを持ってラーメンというものを味わっていただいていると思いますから、何でしょうか、その影響というのはこれから少しずつ出ていくのかなというふうには思います。
So to see such a variety of colorful different ramen donburi in one place, I think was a first for many Japanese people. So I think the impression we left was like a wow, like the graphics can be this free, like there are no expectations. I think that really broke through sort of the set expectation of what ramen donburi are supposed to look like for a lot of Japanese people. So now when they go and eat ramen, I think they will be saying, oh, is this donburi going to be conservative or radical? And so I think that effect has already taken place. And what you mentioned, I think will gradually start to happen and people may reach for the more interesting ramen bowls in the future.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to put this question to Satoh-san. Now that you've brought this exhibition with many more parts to it, introduction to the history of ramen, the culture of ramen, and this wonderful kaibo anatomy section that you've created, and also an introduction to Mino and its ceramic history and all its ceramic production. Now that you've brought this to an American audience here in Los Angeles, what do you hope the exhibition will teach Americans about not just ramen, but also Japanese design? It's a big question.
佐藤さんへの質問ですけれども、今回のこの展覧会でラーメンの文化だったり解剖の部分だったりとか、ミノについてだったりとかいろんなものをアメリカの方に、お伝えしていると思います。この展覧会をもってアメリカの観客の一般の方には、何を取ってほしいですか？日本のデザインについてどういう思いを持ってほしいですか？
食べるっていうことはですね、ただ味わう、口で、味わう、匂いを嗅いで味わうだけではなくて、器を楽しむであったりとか、それから空間を楽しむ、照明を楽しむ、会話を楽しむ、いわゆる食べるっていうことは、ただお腹がいっぱいになるだけ、それを目的にしているわけではもちろんないと思いますね。で、やっぱり器を楽しむ文化っていうのは、日本には古くからあると思います。ですが、こういう敷居の低いラーメン丼からですね、何か器をその物理的な食べるっていうことだけではなくて、器を楽しむっていうことに対してもですね、少し目を向けていただくと、また食べるということがどういうことなのかっていうのが少し変わっていくのかなと。もちろんそういう方々いっぱいいらっしゃるとも思いますから、けれども何かそういうきっかけにこれが少しでもなれば大変嬉しいですね。
So to eat is not just about the flavor and the smell of a dish. The container, the atmosphere, like the lighting and the conversation that you have over the meal is just as important. It's not just about filling the body, right? So to enjoy the container or the plate that the food comes in has been something that is an integral part of Japanese culture since ancient times. And so it's not just about the physical eating, but I hope that American audiences look at the container and enjoy that. And maybe it becomes a hint as to changing what a meal really means here.
Mm-hmm. So the art of eating. You're being artistic in your eating.
食べるだけではなく、食べることに芸術性を感じるということですね。
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to ask the same question to Hashimoto-san. What are your hopes that this exhibition will teach Americans about Japanese food and Japanese design?
橋本さんにも同じ質問をしたいと思います。
はい、アメリカの方に教えるというよりもむしろですね、こんなにラーメンボールのデザインは自由なんだということを知っていただいた後は、むしろアメリカの方の方が自由な、より新しい、そして尖ったラーメンボールのデザインができるかもしれないので、それを日本に逆輸入するぐらいのことがあると嬉しいなと思います。我々が、日本人が思いもよらないラーメンボールのデザインをどうか我々に教えてくださいと思っています。
So these designs of the ramen donburi are so free for American audiences to experience that they now know that there's a lot of freedom in designing these, and the United States is a very free country. So I actually hope American artists can create their own, and that we can sort of reverse import back into Japan these creative designs. So I'd love to be taught some of these new ideas myself.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure after this exhibition, many artists and designers will be inspired. We actually do already have a question from somebody in the Q&A about this point, already asking about designing ramen bowls. So I'll come to that.
そうですね。この展覧会の後は、たくさんの方がとても自由に丼の芸術作品を作ると思いますので、楽しみですね。そして今もうすでに Q&A でもこのトピックに関連した質問が来ているので、Q&A の時にもう一度触れたいと思います。
This is a question to both Satoh-san as a designer, but also to Hashimoto-san. We'll start with Satoh-san. How do you think the design of a bowl can change our experience of the food inside? And can you give us an example? For example, from this exhibition, is there a bowl in the exhibition that could change the way you eat ramen? If you were to eat out of that bowl, how would it change your experience?
ではお二人にお聞きしたいんですけれども、まずは佐藤さんの方からお聞きします。丼のデザインによって、ラーメンを食べるという経験が変化するということはあると思いますか？どのように変化すると思いますか？今回の展覧会で何か例があれば、その食べ方が変わるというものはありますでしょうか？
ラーメンっていうのはですね、大体一杯で、ラーメン一杯で食事が終わっ ちゃうんですね。もちろん他に餃子食べたりいろいろなものをいっぱい食べる人もいますけども、日本では多くの人がもうラーメン一杯で、初めて食べ終わって、それは1食分なんですね。つまりそこにこう集中する、ラーメン一杯にこう集中することができるわけですね。ですからラーメンがこう丼に入ってる時にはラーメンの内側のデザインって見えないわけですよね。で食べていくと少しずつ少しずつスープが減ってって内側の、グラフィックが少しずつ見えてくる。でスープも全部飲み干すと一番そこに書いてあるものが初めて登場するっていうですね、なんかそういうこう器にこう集中できる時間があるって言いますか、しかも上に向かって結構こう広がっている形なので中のグラフィックもよく見えるわけですね。ですから時間とともに徐々にこう見えていくその物語って言いますか、そういうことにこう改めて気がついて、我々もそうなんですけれども気がついていますし、気がついていただけたらっていう感じですね。
So, ramen, one bowl really is the beginning, middle, and end of a meal. You can have dishes like gyoza, pot stickers with your meal, but many people just order a bowl of ramen and that is their entire meal. So you really get to focus on that one bowl. And with ramen bowl, you get it filled with the ramen, so you don't actually see the design in the bottom of the bowl. And little by little, as you eat, then you start to see the design. And when you finally finish the last drop of soup, that's when you get to see the graphic at the very bottom. It really gives you time to focus on the bowl. And because it's so open like this, it's easy to see the graphic as well as that sort of story unfolds. So I hope that is something that people notice when they see this exhibit as well.
And a question that's related to Hashimoto-san, with your experience of Japanese art and design, what do you think is unique about Japanese delicious design? So the Japanese approach to designing food vessels or food and drink vessels in order to enhance the enjoyment of the food and drink. What do the Japanese artists and designers do that perhaps isn't done in other cultures?
橋本さんへの質問は、日本の芸術やデザインの世界の中で、何がこの食べ物の器というもので何がユニークなところでしょうか。最も変わっているというところはどのような部分ですか。
そうですね。食べるという行為は、世界中どこに行ってもそんなに変わりはしないとは思うんですけれども、日本の料理、和食の器ということで、その中からユニークな部分をもし探し出すとしたら、ラーメン丼でも体験できることですけれども、器そのものを手に取る、またそこに口をつけて食べる、そして家にある器について言うならば、個人個人で自分の器というものがある、そういう状況ですね。
I think the process of eating is not all that different around the world. With washoku or Japanese food, there is a particular set of dishes and containers that you use. And similarly with the ramen donburi, in Japan, you actually pick up the container and hold it in your hand as you're eating. And you even put your mouth to it as you eat at times. And so that's something that's unique. And also in Japanese households, usually each person will sort of have their bowl or their plate that is theirs.
そして今申し上げたことともつながっていきますが、器に本当に多くのバリエーションがあるということです。その一つの、ディナーなりランチなりというその1回の食事の中でアンティークのものを使ったり、現代の作家が作ったものを使ったり、あるいは素材が木であったり、ガラスであったり、またセラミックであったり、竹であったり、石であったりと、非常にさまざまな素材を使う。そして、申し上げたように、形にもさまざまなバリエーションがある。で、それらをまるでオーケストレーションするように取り合わせて、不調和も含めたハーモニーとして、テーブル全体の中でその食器のコーディネーションを楽しんでいく。で、結局そうするとそれは自分が楽しいだけではなくて、相手がそのテーブルを囲んでいる自分ともう 他のゲスト、そのゲストはもしかすると複数かもしれませんが、そのゲストも含めて自分以外の人間が使っているさまざまなバリエーションの器の面白さも楽しむことができると言えばいいんでしょうか。自分が使う器を楽しむだけではなくて、テーブルを囲んでいる他の人が使っている器のとりどりの姿さえも含めて、テーブル全体の景色、器が織りなす景色、器が料理と一緒に織りなす景色というものを楽しむことができる。それが和食の一つの特徴ではないかと思っています。
So the containers have a lot of variation in terms of, whether it's dinner or lunch, you could be starting with antique ware and then using modern. You might have wood bowls or glass. You might use ceramic or rock. And there are all of these different shapes that come into play and that get orchestrated, you could say. And within that, there's disharmony at times as well. And that's another interesting thing about it. And it's the entire sort of orchestration or coordination that is really fun for everyone, not just the person who is planning the meal, but the guests and everyone at the table. And so you get to sit at the table and see the coordination that everyone is sort of experiencing. And it's like you're seeing the table as scenery, you're seeing it as one scene. And that's really, I think, what makes Japanese food unique.
つい数日前にとあるお茶会に参加したんですが、その時に、5、6人のお客様で食事を一緒にしたんですね。で、お茶会のその食事のメインとして扱われる器、一番大事な料理が盛られる器がまさに美濃の、しかも400年前の桃山時代の器がこうずらりと揃ったんですけれども、自分以外のお客様が使っているのが、ある人は織部焼きである。ある人は、もう少し後の尾形乾山の器であったり、またあるものは、キゼトであったり、ちょうど今展覧会の中で美濃焼のパートに登場する、美濃の古い器が本当に形も、焼き方もさまざまな器が、しかも400年前のアンティークがこう揃っていたんですね。でそうすると自分の使っている器も素敵と思うんですけれども、他のお客様が使っている器ももう気になって展覧会にいるみたいなそんな気持ちになってしまって、そこまでの機会はなかなかないんですけれども、そうやって他のお客様の器にすら、そのデザインの違い、素材の違いで楽しむことができる、そういう、体験をちょうどしたばかりです。
So just a few days ago, I was having tea with some friends, 5 or 6 people, and for that meal, the main container or bowl that was used was this 400-year-old bowls from the Momoyama period. And so some were the oribeyaki, and some were kenzan, made by kenzan, and some were kireto. And then there's also the minoyaki, which is from the Mino region, like we were mentioning. And so there were all of these essentially antiques that we were eating out of. And I was fascinated by my own bowl, but I also was sort of looking at what everybody else was eating out of, because it was like being at an art exhibit. So that was a very special experience just a few days ago.
Great. I'm going to ask, before we take a few questions from the audience, I'm going to ask Satoh-san, what do you think is unique about Japanese design for food vessels?
では、佐藤さんに日本の食器のデザインという考えの中で何が最もユニークだと思いますか？
いや、今、橋本さんが本当にお話しされましたので、私も今勉強させてもらいました。全くその通りだと思いますね。器が本当に豊かで、もう本当いろいろな種類があります。
So, I think Ms. Hashimoto did a wonderful job of expressing what is unique about Japanese design and its rich diversity. But I do have one idea to share.
ちょっと質問の答えになっているかどうかわからないんですが、一つアイデアを持ってまして、私は美濃にミノラーメンというラーメン屋さんを作りたいというアイデアを持っています。で、そのラーメン屋さんはどういうラーメン屋さんかっていうと、味は1種類なんですね。味は1種類しかないんです。だけど、お店の中に貼ってある、普通だったらメニューですね。味噌ラーメン、塩ラーメン、醤油ラーメン。 いろいろなメニューがあるところに焼き物の名前が書いてあるんですね。シノとかセトグロとかですね、オリベとかですね、いろんなその焼き物の名前が書いてあって、で焼き物を選んでその器でその美味しいラーメンを食べるっていう、器を選んでその美味しいラーメンを食べるっていうラーメン屋さんを前から作りたいとずっと思って、まだ実現していません。アメリカからぜひそれは作るべきだっていう声を上げてください。
So my idea is to start a ramen restaurant in Mino, and the idea is to have only one flavor, but the menu that you would normally see on the wall is for all of the, for normally it would be tonkotsu or soy based or miso or whatever, but it would be the name of the bowls like shino or setoguro or oribe. And so you would choose the bowl that you eat out of, but you know what food you're going to get. So I've always wanted to do that. And so please send your words of encouragement from the US so this can happen in reality.
Yeah, let's make that happen for sure. We do have a few questions from the audience. Some of the questions are related to Mino ceramics. And I just want to say that we have another webinar on April 5th that will be all about Mino ceramics and the different types of ceramics, the history. Would be great if you could join us for that one. I will get to those questions after the other ones, if we still have time. We have but one question that I think is worth explaining right now, and it was one of the first questions. What's the difference between a donburi and a chawan? So a donburi, this is a bowl, but a chawan is also a bowl. Hashimoto-san, would you like to explain what a donburi is for people who don't know the different bowl names? Just briefly, and then a chawan.
観客からの質問で、身の焼きについてたくさん来ているんですけれども、この先でも別のウェビナーがありますので、主に他の質問に集中したいと思いますが、まずは、丼と、茶碗の違いについて、違いは何ですかという質問が来ています。そこからまず、橋本さん、教えていただけますでしょうか。
はい。基本的には大きさと用途で必ずしも厳密に分かれているわけではない、その時々で自分が使いやすい方を選んでいるということになると思いますけれども、茶碗といった場合は、その名の通りティーボール、お茶を飲む、抹茶を飲む碗ですね。ただ日本の陶芸の中では茶碗というのは非常に格が高いものとして扱われますので、そこに別のものを盛る、よそうということは基本的にはないんですけれども、サイズから言えばそこに別のものをほんのちょっとした料理を入れる碗として使っても、問題はないかもしれませんが、日本ではあまりしないですね。そして丼というのはこれはまさに食器としてそこにヌードル系のものを入れるのか、ご飯を盛ってそこに何かおかずを乗せたワンボールのライスのメニューとして使うのか、それはどのような用途に使ってもその人自身の裁量に任されている食器ということでいいと思います。でそういう区別がはっきりつけるようになったのは割と新しい時代の話で、それこそ400年前に関して言うならば、これは茶碗としてお茶の席で使ったのか、もしかするとまた別のものを入れたのかというサイズの茶碗にはちょっと大きすぎる、だからこれは食器として使ったのか、しかしそれを入れてある箱には茶碗と書いてあるなという判断のつきにくい茶道具も多々あります。
So in terms of the size and purpose of these two bowls or cups, there isn't necessarily a strict use for each of them, but the chawan or the tea bowl would be for matcha. And that the chawan is also a pretty high quality ceramic in Japan. And so they usually don't put other dishes in the chawan or tea cup or tea bowl. So it wouldn't be a problem to do so, but in Japan, people just don't do that. And for the donburi, they're usually larger, and you put either noodles or you might do like a rice bowl dish in there with rice and a main dish in there with it. and it can kind of serve multiple purposes. It's basically an eating bowl. That's more of a recent distinction. Like 400 years ago, there were chawan or teacups that were maybe a little big for tea, but the box that they're in was labeled, teacup. So it may have been a little bit more flexible back then.
And donburi today are mostly for food, for noodles or rice dishes. And don ireru, you can put lots of food in. Sort of the don, maybe that relating to the volume. I have to just share quickly a story, just for a second. I met a businessman from Osaka in Kyoto, and he had a raku tea bowl, a very, very valuable antique tea bowl, and he was boasting that he had eaten udon out of his tea bowl. And the Kyoto elegant gentleman he was telling this to was horrified that he had eaten udon out of a tea bowl. So you're not supposed to really eat noodles, low-class food out of high-class bowls. So I'm running out of time for questions. So I'll quickly, a couple more questions. This one for Satoh-san. Amateur potter in the chat, in the Q&A, asked if there are any rules for designing ramen bowl. Are there any rules?
佐藤さんに質問です。観客の方で、アマチュアの陶器を作られている方がいますけれども、ラーメンの丼を作るとき、ルールはありますかとの質問です。
ラーメンが食べられればいいんじゃないですかね。ラーメンが食べられるっていう、それだけだと思います。
I think if you can eat ramen out of it, then pretty much anything goes. I think that is the most important thing.
I think so. Good answer. Good answer. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I quickly wanted to, the next webinar, there's a link in the chat to the next webinar on Mino ceramics. And no, Mino ceramics are not just porcelain. They have a tradition of stoneware ceramics as well. And we have people asking where to visit in Mino if they're going to the Ceramic Valley, where should they go? There are some places in Mino. We'll try to put the information in the chat. I'm going to end with one last question about who decides in a ramen restaurant the types of bowls that are given to customers. Is it the chef, the restaurant owner, who would choose the style of the ramen bowl in the restaurant? That's kind of, I think, a fun question to end on.
ラーメンの丼を選ぶ人はどなたですか？そのラーメンのお店で、それはオーナーになるのか、シェフになるのか、どなたが、どのような丼を出すのか、決める役割を果たしていますか？
いわゆる料理長であることが多いと思いますね。現状はですね。だから中身の味を作ってる人が、やっぱり丼もやっぱり希望する、こういうふうなものにしたいって希望していることが多いと思いますね。
Usually it's the head chef that decides now, mainly I think because they determine the taste, and so they kind of determine the design that should go with the flavor as well.
Thank you. And I think there are a lot of people asking about these ramen bowls. We unfortunately won't be selling them. A lot of people interested in purchasing them. Sadly, we can't be selling them here. There's a question about donburi and renge, if they're always matched. They are in this exhibition, but I think that most renge are pretty simple when you go to a ramen restaurant. I'm afraid I'm going to have to. We've gone past 6 o'clock here, so it's time to wrap up. Although this is such a fun conversation, I'd love to keep going. I'd like to thank both Taku Satoh and Mari Hashimoto for joining us today, and to David for translating. Thank you so much. And thank you for all your great questions. And I apologize that we couldn't get to them all. The exhibition, we hope you can come and visit the exhibition, The Art of the Ramen Bowl. It's open till July 5th, and it's free of charge. We look forward to seeing you in the gallery. For those of you who don't live near here and can't see the exhibition in person, we have an online exhibition on our website, and we will have a virtual tour up fairly soon. And we also have several programs relating to the exhibition coming up, including the webinar on April 5th that's all about the history of Mino ceramics with Morgan Patelka. Please join us for that too. And we're going to be hosting an increasing number of on-site events in the coming weeks, including ramen-related film screenings, and a ramen discoveries pop-up series where you can taste different styles of regional ramen from Japan. And we still have some Wagyu pop-up programs in our restaurant space now. So stay up to date on our events by subscribing to the Japan House newsletter. And today, when you exit the program, please take the time to fill out our survey so that we know what kind of programs you enjoy most and can provide more of those. Thank you all for joining us today, and a huge thank you to Taku Satoh and Mari Hashimoto and our translator, David Neptune. Thank you all for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe. And gochisou-sama.
ごちそうさまでした。
様でした。